Hello and welcome to the Psych Leadership Podcast, the podcast that helps you understand the psychology of growth, leadership, and making big moves in your life and career. As always, my name's Luke UpChurch, and I'm so happy that you took time out of your day to hang out with me. So today we're going to revisit the concept of imposter syndrome. If you recall way back in season 1, we hit imposter syndrome pretty hard. We talked about this as a general thing that you deal with just as you're moving into new roles across the spectrum, right? Today, I want you to think about this in terms of now you've actually gotten the job that you applied to receive. So it's a little different framework because in season 3, remember, we were building on the how do I become a leader? Well, now in season 4, you've made the shift, right? You're actually finally in that position. And I don't know about you, but it's kind of like when you see the movie trailer or a video game trailer for months on end and you build up this anticipation of your mind of what the world's going to be like when you finally cross over that threshold, right? When you finally see the movie, when you finally play the game, what's it going to feel like? What's it going to be like? And then suddenly you're there and you're not quite sure what the hell to do with it. Right. Well, that's imposter syndrome in a nutshell. It feels like, I see a lot of kids do this right as they come out of college. They get that degree. They feel like on paper, I know something. And then the reality of it hits and you realize that everybody else in the room with you, they may or may not have that degree. A lot of them have even more advanced degrees than what you've just obtained. But what's more, they have the experience, not just the experience in the job itself, but the life experience. And so then it's oh shit, did I completely screw up? Should I have just signed up for the master's degree and put off this whole adulting thing till later on in life? Well, that's really what we're here to talk about today. Is how do you deal with that overall imposter syndrome? So first off, let's talk about where this comes from and why it hits capable people the hardest, what it actually looks like day to day, and what you can do about it, starting right now. So first, let's paint the picture a little bit. You're 6 weeks into a role. You're in a meeting and someone asks you a question that you don't immediately know the answer to, and man, your stomach just drops, right? It's almost like the TV show where the lights in the room drop and the spotlight's on you, beads of sweat rolling down your face, right? It's not just because in that moment it feels like high stakes, but it's a part of your brain that just registered it as proof. Proof of what exactly? That you shouldn't be at the table. Right? That's what you tell yourself is they asked me a question. I didn't know it right away. Shoot, they found me out. Right? So never mind the fact that you got hired through a real process, that people with far more experience than you signed off on bringing you in. Don't pay any attention to the fact that you've already solved 3 genuinely hard problems since you've started. Right? No one gets to vote in that moment. The one question you couldn't answer instantly outweighs all of that, right? So if that sounds familiar, it's not that you're broken. It's well documented, and that's really what we're unpacking here. So the term imposter phenomenon was actually first coined in 1978 by 2 psychologists, Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes, in a paper published in the Journal of Psychotherapy. It was called Theory, Research, and Practice. They were studying high-achieving women with advanced degrees, strong professional records, external validation coming from every direction, and they kept finding the same internal experience, a persistent belief that their success was somehow accidental, right? That it was undeserved, and that they would be exposed as a fraud despite the objective evidence to the contrary. That's the key detail that I want you to sit with for a second. This isn't a confidence problem in the way we usually talk about confidence. It's not like these people lack the skills or the achievements. They have plenty of both. And they still couldn't internalize it. The evidence was sitting right there in front of them. The belief system just refused to accept the evidence. And that's what makes this pattern kind of sneaky, right? It's you can't just prove it wrong with one or more accomplishment. It's because the pattern isn't actually built on facts itself. It's built on a filter that the facts have to pass through. The filter itself is broken in that case, right? You're not paying attention to those key factors that tell you you're worrying about nothing. And I don't want to get this confused. That's not to say that you came out with your college degree and that you have this life experience, this educational experience, and suddenly you know everything, right? Don't get it twisted. You're still going to be asked a question that you know nothing about. The trick here is being able to pivot that a little bit. Being able to say, I'm not sure, I haven't thought about it that way, or, just really just be humble enough to be aware of what you know and confident enough to be in the moment aware of what you do know, right? So when I'm in that same meeting and somebody asks me a question, and listen, I've been out of school for a little while. I'm not going to tell you that this suddenly goes away. When somebody asks me a question that completely throws me, I like to pause. And this does a couple things. First off, it gives time for my amygdala to kind of catch up, right? Because in that moment, you're sort of in this fight or flight situation. And I don't know about you, but I'm already looking for an exit strategy at this point. Like, oh, crap, they found me out. But I like to pause to give myself time to just digest the question, think about how I would approach it, even if that means saying out loud, I really haven't given that a lot of thought. Let me ponder on that and come back to it. Let me noodle on that a minute and I'll come back to you. And then I like to leave them with a timeline so that it doesn't feel like I'm just pushing them off. So, hey, let me noodle on that and come back to you. Is it all right if I come back, say, end of week? And I that's kind of my go-to, but I give that time frame so that they understand I'm not just blowing you off. I just don't have a good answer, and I don't want to speak out of turn. The other cool thing, by the way, from a little psychological trick here, that pause, not immediately answering, actually helps to combat the perception of imposter syndrome that's driving the behavior in the first place, right? So you think that they don't believe in you. You think that they don't trust in your ability. When you pause like that and say, hey, I need to come back to you on this. I need to do a little bit of research on my own before I speak out of turn. That says I'm humble enough to know that I don't want to answer you quickly, to know that this requires and deserves more than just a knee-jerk, quick answer, okay? So you're actually helping to build the confidence from their perspective while also giving yourself the space and the freedom, the headroom to basically prove yourself wrong, okay? So since that 1978 paper, the research has actually expanded well past that original population. There was this 2020 systemic review published in the Journal of Internal Medicine by, I believe her name is Dana Bravata, and some other colleagues were involved there too. They looked across decades of studies and found that imposter syndrome shows up in a huge range of people: students, professionals, executives, people at every income and every experience, with prevalent estimates in some populations running as high as 82%. 82%. That's not a rare psychological quirk that only affects a handful of anxious overachievers, right? That's pretty much everybody in the room. That's most of your team. So statistically, it's probably some of the people that you assume have it all figured out. Right? So the moral of that is you are not alone, my friend. Everybody sitting in the room with you, or at least the ones that have enough common sense to realize that maybe they're fighting above their weight class, they're right there in the same boat with you. And here's the part that should really land on anyone that's early in their career, right? My target audience here. The people most likely to experience this, you're not underperformers. In fact, it's quite the opposite. There's this paper in 2011. It was published in the Journal of Behavioral Sciences. The gentleman's name, I believe this is a gentleman, Jarwan Sculia. I'm probably mispronouncing that. I'll leave a link in the description. In any case, he describes what sometimes he calls it the imposter cycle. It works like this, all right? A high achiever sets an ambitious goal. They work themselves into anxiety and over preparation to meet that goal. They succeed, and then they attribute the success to luck or timing over effort rather than their actual ability, which means the success doesn't build confidence the way that it should. It actually kind of resets that anxiety clock for the next challenge. You never get to cash in on the win. You actually just reload the same fear and aim it at the next project. Think about what that actually does over a career. Every promotion becomes a new stage for the same anxiety to twist you up. Instead of proof that the last stage went fine, every new responsibility gets filtered through that mindset of, I'll probably get exposed on this one, right? Like, I got lucky before, but this next one, that's when they're going to find out that I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Instead of us reframing that, and that's really what I want you to focus on here. It's called cognitive reframing, and we've discussed this concept before, but it's that mindset of, you know what, I've handled harder things than this, and I can do it, right? I've gotten over those hurdles in the past. This is just another hurdle, and I'll achieve it the same way that I did before, through hard work, perseverance, and asking questions when I don't know what I'm doing, and being comfortable to admit that, right? There's also an important layer of this research on who carries the burden most heavily, and I don't want to skip past that. This 2013 study by Kevin Clockey and other colleagues, it was published in the Journal of Counseling Psychology. It found that imposter feeling was most significantly associated with experience of discrimination among racial and ethnic minority college students. That those feelings acted as a real mechanism connecting discrimination to negative mental health outcomes like depression and anxiety. So this isn't purely an individual mindset issue to manage with a clever reframing. For some people, it's compounded by real structural experience of not being made to feel like they belong in the room in the first place, right? If that's part of your story, the framework I'm about to give you still helps, but it's not the whole situation. And it shouldn't be treated like the only piece that matters. Context matters, and I'd rather name that than pretend that this framework fixes everything for everybody. So why does this hit especially hard early in your career? Because if you're a new grad in your first real job, you just got a promotion, just started managing people for the first time, almost by definition, operating outside of your zone of proven competence puts you in this situation, right? That's not a flaw. That's just what growth looks like. You can't get good at something that you've already mastered, right? That's just the nature of growth in your career. What I want you to focus there on is that a brain that's wired to interpret, I don't fully know what I'm doing yet, as I don't belong here, instead of the far more accurate sentence, I'm still learning. That's the piece that I want you to wrap your head around, okay? So again, that cognitive reframing, let's go from I don't know what I'm doing yet to I will someday. Does that make sense? Hopefully that lands with you. Because it's normal as you move into those roles to feel like you're a little out of place. But if you feel that you're out of place because you somehow tricked people, again, people with more experience than you decided that you knew what you were doing, right? And another piece that I would tell you as a hiring manager, I don't hire people that are absolute masters of the job. In fact, I use what's called the method for hiring A players. Shout out to author Jeff Smart here. But in his book, he talks about this idea that if you hire folks, if you think of your traditional college grade lettering scale, if I hire folks that are, say, a 96% or above, right, they've already exceeded the expectations for the current role. So I better have something in mind to challenge them, or they're going to be super bored. Right. So I've invested all this time in hiring you just for you to go away because you're going to be bored. You're going to find a new challenge. And if that's not with my team, then it's not with my team. Right. I'm actually aiming for the folks that are in the high 90s. So I still want an A player. I still want the person that has the potential to get to that 96. Right. Because I want you to outgrow my team. Let me say that again for those in the back. I want you to outgrow my team, and every good leader has the same mentality. I don't hire somebody because I expect them to just be on this team forever. Shoot, I don't want to be on my team forever, right? Like when I say my team, I mean my current job, right? I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to continue to get better at it, and I want my team to do the same thing, right? So I hire folks that are in the high 90s in terms of mentality, in terms of technical expertise, in terms of emotional intelligence, all those things. I'm going to hire them knowing that they are not at that 96 percentile or above because I want them to grow into it. Again, hopefully that resonates with you. All right, so now I'd like to give you some tools to help you get past this imposter syndrome. And I want to be clear, this isn't something that you can just will away. It's always going to be there. It's a matter of how we deal with it, right? We want to change that mindset of I just got lucky, or I have to be perfect, or if I'm not just a genius, then this falls apart. And the system that I'm going to give you, it's called TRACK, and this is kind of something that I came up with as I was doing research for this. So TRACK, TRAC, track, reframe, ask, and code. So let's start off with TRACK. This is our evidence file, and it really becomes the foundation for everything else that I'm going to tell you here. Essentially, your brain doesn't file the concept, I did well, the same way it files, I made a mistake. Mistakes get flagged as important and stored as a vivid, painful detail because your brain actually treats that as a threat. And so that information is high priority. Wins get filed under, well, anyone could have done that, and basically deleted on the spot. So you have to force the system to keep that record. Keep a running document. Doesn't matter if this is in a notes app, a spreadsheet, a journal. I actually do this out in OneNote. I've been doing this for years. And by the way, pro tip, this really helps out with your annual and mid-year review. Every year, I start a new file for my annual review or my goals or whatever, my achievements for that calendar year. And then I actually, I'm pretty intentional about this, and I'd recommend you do the same. Schedule a block of time on your calendar that once a month, you're just going to go back and reflect what happened this month, what went really well, what can I mark down as an achievement. And to some, this is also a spot for self-reflection. What could you have done better? Okay, that's a topic for another day. But for right now, to help track, I want you to document that out. And you don't have to write novels, right? But just a quick bullet, landed this presentation really well, completed this project on time and under budget, right? But do that in whatever is easiest. So that, and this is just one line at a time. What happened? What did you did? Why did it matter? Over a few months, this stops being a vague feeling and becomes actual factual record that you can go back and read to kind of combat that voice in your head, that you can see what I've accomplished is actually real. And at that point, it doesn't feel like you're arguing with yourself anymore. You're checking that feeling against the document, and the document, that document's ultimately going to win, right? It's going to show you the proof of what you achieved. The next piece is reframe. And we kind of talked about this before, but this is The story that you tell yourself about why things went well. The imposter pattern has a very specific, very consistent attribution style. Success gets credited to luck or timing, right? And failure gets credited to your own lack of ability. So reframing, cognitive reframing means that we're going to be deliberate about this. We're going to consciously flip the script in that moment. When something goes well, ask yourself honestly, what skills, what decisions, what preparation or effort did you actually put in that contributed to that outcome? You don't have to claim that you're the only reason that it worked. Just be honest that you were part of the reason. And when something goes bad, do the opposite. Separate the outcome from your identity. You missed a deadline, a bad quarter, a bad project. That's information about the specific situation under specific constraints at that specific moment. It's not a verdict or anything like that. You're not really trying to diagnose it, right? You're just trying to reframe it. So I'll give you an example. If you think about a recent project that you've done, and I'll use one that I'm actively chasing at work. We have a specific volume of applications that we are trying to onboard to a given platform. And so we have this target, this goal in mind, and everybody is aiming towards that. Now, if I don't make it, is that a direct reflection on me? Well, what did I do to help get us as far as we were, right? Not every problem was my fault. If some were, I need to take ownership of that. But I also need to think through, what did I do that got us as far as we were able to, right? Even if we didn't get the goal, it doesn't mean I didn't run the race. And so I can reframe that so that I put that in perspective. Moving on here, the next piece is ask. So this is the externalizing step. And it might be the single heaviest leverage the single heaviest leverage move in the entire framework. Imposter syndrome thrives on silence because silence lets that voice in the back of your head do all the talking if you don't bounce it off of somebody else. So remember that number that I gave you earlier, that 82% of the population have some level of imposter syndrome. So ask a trusted colleague, a mentor, someone ahead of you a few years, whether they've ever felt like they didn't deserve their role. Have that actual conversation out loud? I will tell you from experience, more often than not, the answer is yes. Sometimes from people whose careers you've been quietly intimidated by, people that you assume never once questioned whether or not they belong. That single conversation does more than just break the spell, but it lets you know that you are not alone in this. And it opens the door for you to directly ask them for some feedback in that moment. For me, this really helps me frame things up better. Going back to that cognitive reframing, I may think, for example, that I presented something and that I felt really nervous in that moment. And then I ask somebody, hey, have you ever gone through imposter syndrome? Tell them, this is what I was feeling in that moment. How did it land? And more often than not, they're going to completely dispel what you thought. I can't tell you how many times I've had people tell me that I sounded so confident in a presentation that I was absolutely sweating bullets about. And just getting that outside perspective quiets the voice in your own head. So the last step is called coach, and it's actually about that internal voice you use with yourself in the moment that things get hard. Most of us never talk to a junior colleague the way we talk to ourselves when we're struggling. If a new hire came to you, visibly rattled, and said, I don't think I'm cut out for this, you wouldn't agree with them on the spot. You'd point out what they're already doing well. You'd normalize the learning curve, right? You'd tell them that you struggled the same way, and that it's not a sign of lack of skill, right? So you wouldn't just let them drown. You would give them the same grace that you yourself need. You'd literally coach yourself the same way that you'd coach somebody else that was developing. That's the shift here, is that when you're having those internal conversations, when you're thinking back and you're reflecting on that moment, I want you to give yourself the same grace that you would. And listen, this feels a little bit awkward, right? Because we're kind of, I'm recommending that you talk to yourself. It actually works. And there's tons of research on positive self-talk, right? If you tell yourself that you're a failure, then you're right. And if you tell yourself that you will succeed, you are right. Okay? So over time, it becomes the default voice instead of the exception. So again, track the evidence, reframe the attribution, ask the question out loud, coach yourself the way that you would coach someone that you believed in. So that's track, TRAC. And none of those 4 steps require you to feel confident before you start. They just require that you start. So here's what I want you to walk away with from this episode. Imposter syndrome isn't proof that you don't belong. It's proof that you're growing faster than your self-image. And there's some catching up there, right? That feeling doesn't mean you're a fraud. It means that you actually pay attention to how much you still have to learn, right? Because the opposite is when folks get to that space and they think they've actually got it all figured out. That can almost be just as detrimental as living in self-doubt. Okay? All right, folks. So if that episode hit home with you, I hope you share it with somebody that needs to hear it. And that's all I had for you today. Have yourself a great day. We'll talk again soon.